Hi, I'm David Lay, and this is the No More Sex Shame video series where we're inviting people to talk about the ways in which sexual shaming has negatively impacted their lives and how they have overcome that sexual shame in order to live lives of sexual integrity, to find ways to incorporate their sexual desires into their life in a conscious, healthy, and authentic kind of way. With me today is Mallory.
Hi, my name is Mallory. I'm a marriage and family therapist intern in California. I guess I'll just talk a little about kind of sex shame and how it's influenced my work and also my personal life. Because as a therapist, those two things can sometimes, we learn things in school and through our clients about ourselves. I was just raised in like a typical traditional family. I'm Jewish, but with atheist tendencies and not conservative in any particular way, just typical kind of boomer parents. And how I fell into marriage and family therapy was I really wanted to work with kids in school because I just always felt like kids were never given like a voice to talk, and I mean particularly high school kids. So that's how I fell into that field. But then when I got into marriage and family therapy, I realized I actually really liked working with couples, and I really liked working in a relational setting, more with the whole family unit. As far as sex shame goes, I noticed a lot of therapists have a lot of sex shame, and those ideas have never really matched my ideas. Growing up, I always had a lot of LGBT friends, and because of that, I was always very open-minded to other people's sexualities and what exists in the world. So I just kind of started noticing that as a trend amongst my colleagues and a lot of my classmates. And so through my work in mostly with like HIV care, because I work at an HIV clinic, I started really analyzing sex and sexuality and how that influences everything we do. As far as my personal life, I'm 28 years old, I'm single, and I noticed that a lot of the reasons I was having issues with dating was really tied into the messages we get about sexuality, especially as a woman and as an overweight woman. We're told a lot about like, you're not supposed to have a sexuality, you're not supposed to have these feelings, and I kind of internalized all of that, and I noticed that that was really making my dating life really, really hard, next to impossible. So while working with people in their relationships, I reflected a lot about my own relationships. So for the last like 2 years or so, I'd say, I've kind of had like what I would call a sexual awakening, and just in my like academic life, I've been doing a lot more reading. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts to learn about different sexualities, and that's been really validating. And to also hear from other women, and especially other overweight women who take ownership of their sexuality, is really empowering, and it kind of sends the message that like you deserve to be loved, which is a message that women, and I think especially overweight women, get, not necessarily like consciously, but definitely subconsciously. So that's where I've been following in that journey.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And one of the really exciting things that I'm experiencing as I do these interviews is that everybody I talk to is teaching me about, different kinds of ways that sexual shame has come out and come into their lives, and teaching me different ways that they have found to address it, and I'll say, I was just talking to Reed Mihalko about this issue, and one of the things we were talking about was the ways that, many therapists struggle to deal with these issues because they haven't worked on their own sexual shame. So, as a therapist, as somebody who does supervision for sex therapists and therapists all over the world, I'm really excited to hear you doing that work for yourself so that you can help patients on this. Go ahead. No.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's definitely like, because like I said, I work at an STD clinic. Well, I work at an HIV clinic, but obviously STDs come up predominantly in the work that we do, and that's definitely something I always try to check in on. Like, am I shaming my client or am I helping my client? because shaming them it's pointless and it's cruel, and we have too much of that already. So I really try to check in with myself regularly.
And not asking you to kind of call out or shame any therapist or such, but could you share a little bit about ways that you've seen other clinicians or therapists, inadvertently shame people about their sexuality, so that maybe therapists watching these videos might hear or see themselves and go, oh, wow, I didn't know I was shaming.
Well, I think, in one way that I notice the most regularly is that, like I said, particularly because I work with people with HIV, a lot of my clients have been, and I've heard therapists do this, giving them the message that, okay, now that they have HIV, they need to change their sexual practices in a way that, doesn't really take into account their experiences or even how they contracted HIV. So what I'm trying to say is, like, I've, for example, I had a client who, well, not a specific client. So sorry, I won't say client. Anyway, I knew this person who was in what's called serodiscordant relationship, and their partner was negative and they're positive. And the therapist just kept asking over and over and over again, do you guys use condoms? Do you use condoms? So they've been in a relationship for like multiple years, and they were monogamous with each other. And I just felt like that was a very shaming question, because it's not really taking into account the knowledge about a STI transmission or HIV transmission, and also their relationship dynamic. So the way that she asked the questions really put that person in a position of, like, telling them the answer that the therapist wanted to hear, just to get the questions to stop. And that's not productive.
That's a great example, Mallory. Thanks. And I bet that therapist thought that they were, helping and doing their job and trying, but they didn't realize that every time they reminded, their patient of this, they were kind of shaking their finger and saying, you are bad because you have HIV and you need to protect everybody else from you, including your partner. And boy, that's a harmful, deep-seated kind of shaming message.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so it's little things like that.
Well, Mallory, thank you. Is there any last message that you'd like to share about sexual shame and maybe where you hope things go?
Well, I mean, I would just really love to see these conversations happen at, like, throughout everyone's whole life, basically. I'd really like for us to take more of, like, as a country, kind of take the more, like, Dutch model of sex education and really, like, start it in kindergarten and run it all the way through life, because these are conversations that we have to have throughout every stage of our development as a person and as a sexual human being. So I'd really like for us to, not be afraid to have these conversations and really just be open and honest and help people solve problems and without making them feel bad about it.
Absolutely. Well, Mallory, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I hope that these conversations move things forward and let other people start to talk about these issues with their therapist and with the important people in their lives, because that's how we move beyond sexual shame.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your time.